So everyone, we're here with Christian Lenty. He is an amazing dude, and he has this ministry, MST, and he is located in Thailand. And I had an opportunity to be with him a couple years back and just really found him to be inspirational on so many different levels. And just the way that he lives his life and the way that he approaches purity and Jesus and his marriage, really all aspects, I really was inspired. In fact, when I met Christian, I was actually at a little bit of a downtime. And after you left, I was like, man, I've got to get my crap together. This guy's, I got to get back to the basics. But the truth is, he lives out the lifestyle, and he's been in Thailand for a long time and has some amazing stories. So we're going to kind of hear from him and hear about his life today. And hopefully you'll be just as inspired as I was. Christian, welcome, man.
Hey, George, thanks for this opportunity. It's great to see you, brother. Great to see you. Yeah,
man. So why don't you give us the lowdown on, just your ministry, who you are, why, the why, how, and when of it all.
Sure. Well, I came to Thailand back in 2001, and I came to serve with a mission organization, in which I still serve with even to this day. But when I first came, I was just kind of doing some admin, working with hosting individuals and teams coming to Thailand. But, it was interesting when we, before we started this interview, you had mentioned that we're all in recovery of something.
Right.
We all have areas of brokenness in our life. And, for me, my brokenness was just kind of feeling rejected, growing up in a single parent family. I don't blame my parents, but the fact that I grew up in a single parent family, there's some things that you deal with. There's some issues that you have to face and that can really affect you as you grow up. And so for myself, I found myself just really struggling with the opposite sex, engaging in pornography addiction when I was younger. And then I, grew into immorality as well as I got older in my life. And I saw God just really bring me to a place of not only repentance, but freedom. And so he began to work in my heart. And, I'm sure George, and maybe your audience does too, that in Thailand, there's a lot of men that come to engage in the lifestyle in red light districts, the nightlife, bars, immorality galore. And I just remember the Lord really impressing upon me, you can identify with these men in some way. You've dealt with those same issues. You've walked in freedom, or you are walking in freedom. And now I want to send you back to help others come out of the darkness and into the light to experience what I can do for them, like I did for you. Mm-hmm. So in 2007, we started a ministry called the MST Project, ministering to men who visit red light districts, men who engage in immorality, either as single men or married men. But what's amazing is out of that ministry, God gave me a heart, I think, not just for men who visit red light districts, but men who struggle in all kinds of issues in their life, purity mainly. And so in 2011, we started another ministry called Pathway to Purity, helping men who are both Christian and non-Christian walk in a lifestyle of sexual purity away from compulsive masturbation, pornography addiction, sinful lust. And then in 2014, we started another ministry called Real Men Pursuing Purity, which is mentorship groups. We do events every 3 months, weekly and bi-weekly connect groups with men from around the world, helping us grow in greater Christ-likeness and pursuing purity. Not just purity understood to be sexual purity, but purity in all aspects of our life, our character, our words, our thoughts, our actions, our boundaries, our relationships. And so it's the MST Project with 3 initiatives: On the Street, again, ministering to men who visit red light districts; Pathway to Purity, ministering to men primarily who are Christian and in the church, struggling with the secret shame of pornography and masturbation and other issues regarding that. And then 2014, Real Men Pursuing Purity, saying, the goal for men isn't just to be sexually pure. The goal for men is to live like Jesus. And how can we live in his image with his character so that he gets the glory and the kingdom of God is expanded on earth?
Man, that is amazing. I didn't realize that they were 3 different ministries that you had started at different times.
Right. Three different initiatives under the MST Project. Right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
3
amazing.
Different initiatives.
Now, I gotta ask this question. Now, being in Thailand, and a lot of the men that you work with come from abroad, I assume, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a ministry to foreign men, but we also work with Thai men who speak English, and so we're able to really get to some deep issues with Thais as well.
Okay, that's amazing. Now, what is it like? Give me an idea of like a typical night in a red light district. What's it look like?
Well, I won't ask you if you've been to one, but it's pretty
I have
crazy.
not, just to be clear, everyone. I've done everything else, not that.
But when we go out into a red light district, you know, we don't go into bars or clubs. You know, our own personal walk with purity is important. And so I'm not willing to subject myself to a level of temptation that can cause me to fall. But what we do is we minister to men at the entrance to those bars, at the entrance to those clubs, and we'll stand on the sidewalk, a team, myself and another guy, or myself and two other men, and we'll just have conversations with guys. You know, I think sometimes I've seen people kind of gonna get a little weirded out by like, so how do you start a conversation with a man in a red light district? And I'm like, the way you would start a conversation with a man at Starbucks. Hello, my name is Chris, or my name is George.
Right.
You know, the environment is different. Obviously, the environment is unique, but people are the same everywhere. And what we're trying to find is we're trying to make a connection with a man, because what we want to do is create a connection where we see this environment that is created of honesty, vulnerability, and authenticity, so that we share not just the things we want people to see, but the things that we're ashamed of as well. Because the goal is to walk into the light. And one of the things I share with people is, growth doesn't happen in darkness or in isolation. It happens in light and within community. And what we're trying to do is be an alternative community to the one that they find themselves in. The community they have now is, it's not healthy. It's not good. It's not holy. It's not honoring. We want to be an alternative community that is healthy and holy and honoring and good. And that's what we seek to create in conversations. And so it just starts off with, hello, my name is Chris. I work with the MST Project. Do you have a few minutes to talk? And on a given night, yeah, I mean, George, we talk to maybe 2 or 3 guys. We'll ask anywhere from 10 to 15 men to stop. Most men will be polite and say no, or I'm not interested, or something else. But I would say out of the 10 to 15, 2 to 3 will stop. And most of those conversations do go to a depth of connection, where you're able to either talk about issues that are important to them, or things that they're going through that maybe they don't feel comfortable sharing with somebody else, maybe a counselor or a psychologist, but somebody that that they can relate to.
What do you think the most common trait of the men you speak to, why they do what they do? You think you could quantify that?
I think in most of the responses we get from men, the reason they do what they do, there's a couple. One is there's no real consequence to it. I think sometimes when I've talked to men, they're like, if I were to become an alcohol addict, I could either die or I could kill somebody in a drunk driving accident. There's some sort of a buffer that keeps them from going there, that they have shared with me. Drugs, guys don't want to end up in prison. Cigarette smoke, you can develop lung cancer. I've heard men say these things, but with sexual addiction or with sexual issues, there's no immediate consequence. And if there is something that is received like a disease, then they say, well, that's just something that I can take care of with a visit to the doctor or modern medicine. And so I find that a lot of men, there's no consequence that might give them second thought to engaging in that behavior. The second thing is a lot of men want to, they just want to recapture what it is they feel they've missed out on in life. My friends are doing it. It's like a frat party. I didn't get to do this when I was married. I didn't get to do this growing up. Here I can come, I can do it. Nobody knows me. Nobody cares about what I do. It's accepted. And I get to live the fantasy of other people. And so we've heard that. But the primary reason I find that men go down there that they shared with us, to drink, to have a beer, to get away from life. It's, I've worked hard. I deserve me time. I've heard that a lot. I provide for my family. I go to work. I do the 9 to 5, but I don't have anything for me. There's nothing that's for me. This is my time where I don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have to give an account for what I do. This is just for me. I've heard that quite a few times as well.
Yeah, that's, now one thing that you may or may not know is I actually personally have, struggled with sex addiction, and in my, sobriety from alcohol and drugs in particular over the last 14 years. The issues with sex didn't come along until later. And I mean, they were always there, but kind of like these guys would say, there was no consequence. So maybe I was drinking and getting DUIs and shooting dope, but I didn't even pay attention to the fact that I just slept with 4 different women in the last 3 days. And so that was like the highlight, you know, that was okay. And so you don't realize, you know, for me, and being, you know, a pastor and a counselor and somebody that works with men in addiction, constantly trying to learn and study the nature of addiction itself to help others, but also to keep myself sober. And I gotta be honest that I think that sex addiction is probably the most complicated and difficult of all addictions out there from a long-term perspective of how do we overcome this in a way that a person can live a life that is whole and free, because of the way that, for one, you know, sex addiction is, you know, so linked to society norms of being married and having sex, or, you know, just the fact that, you know, if you're not a Christian, especially, that, you know, it's manly to go sleep around, or you know, systems that are founded like that. But in general, like once you get to the place of no, it's sex addiction, you see the behavior, which to me is just unbelievable, because it's so much like chemical addiction in the sense that a person may start smoking weed, go to powder cocaine, before they're smoking rock cocaine, maybe they snorted heroin, but now they're shooting heroin. It's almost like this progressive tendency. And then in sex addiction, it's the same way. In fact, what I found, and I talked to a lot of our, you know, I talked to a lot of, like, actually wives, sometimes of wives of men that, you know, have come through, you know, TI or whatever, and or just people I've worked with it, and they're like, yeah, I think my husband may have looked at porn, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty good compared to where he could end up, because he's, you know, he's supplanting his heroin addiction for this. Now, obviously, it's not good, but you see this progressive tendency where it goes from, you know, looking at porn to picking up prostitutes to, you know, whatever, sexual assault, which is basically the way that the author of In the Shadows writes it. It's like, this is how this can end. Do you see that in some of the men you work with, where once you, not just the guys you have a conversation with, but maybe the ones you actually get to have more intentional time with, where they actually are like, yeah, man, it started as this and then ended up as that, and I don't even know how.
I would say almost every man. You know, it's interesting because I share with people, you know, when I speak somewhere, I share, you know, men that come to red light districts. It's not like they woke up on a Monday morning and life was great, right? You know, they had a great romantic weekend with their wife, you know, they got a promotion at work, money's coming in, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, let me just go do something just completely foreign to routine and stability. Usually it's something, at least in the men that I've talked to, something has happened at work, something that's affected their identity, something that's affected their perception of their manhood, or something that's happened in their marriage. And so they've gone to an unhealthy coping mechanism, something to escape to, something that doesn't require them to dig deep, to work through, to process, to share, or to talk, something to hide behind. And so it might start off as porn, right? And so it becomes something that, well, I'll look at porn, but I'll control it. You know, I'll only look maybe 2 times a week, or I'll only look 1 day a month. And then of course, we know that porn, it doesn't work like that. And so it becomes deeper, it becomes wider, and it begins to take you down this path that I think when I talk to men, or even when I look at my own life, you get to a point where you're like, how did I get here? Like, I don't even know how I got here. I don't even remember I just don't remember the path. I just know that I'm here, and I'm embarrassed that I'm here. I'm ashamed that I'm here, and I don't even know how I got here. And I think sometimes, I love how you mentioned this, George. I think our culture plays a big part of it. You know, you can look on Instagram, you can look on Facebook, TV shows, movies, whatever it is, and this hookup culture is celebrated. you know? And so it's like we encourage, we look at these men who do these things that in more modest times would be looked at as inappropriate and things to shun, whereas today we celebrate it. And so my challenge to a lot of people is, if we celebrate it in culture, why are we shocked when people do it in reality?
Right.
You know, all they're doing is living out what this consistent message of this is what you need to do. And you'll not only be cheered for it, you'll get likes for it, you'll get retweets for it, you'll get multiple shares. And so I'm not surprised that culture's influenced men. And yet I'm surprised when we're surprised that men live out what the cultural message that is a consistent drumbeat every day. But I will say, again, to answer your question, most men that I've talked to probably would never have started, would never have opened the door if they knew the destination that they would finally end up at.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Thailand, do you see mainly men that are there for the women, or is it the children, or what is it that you kind of encounter?
Right. Our ministry is primarily to men that go to places where heterosexual prostitution is available. But there are men that we work with who deal with same-sex attraction. And so they would go to places where men are available for sexual purchase, as well as Thailand also has lady boys or transgendered individuals, and that's available as well.
Right. Now, do you partner with any ministries or anyone that works with the women coming out of prostitution?
There are, if there are women, again, our focus is primarily on men, but if there's men that we know whose wives need help or need some sort of help, then we have people that we can refer them to. If we're out on a night of ministry and we see a woman who is maybe, crying, or maybe she looks like she's just been a victim of abuse or something, then there are ministries that we can connect that individual to, for sure. But usually it works the other way around. It's ministries that work with women who end up calling us to help either their husband or their boyfriend. And so it goes both ways, but we've seen it more happen where they've contacted us to maybe step in and see if we can be a support to a woman's husband or boyfriend.
Okay, yeah, but so they do exist there. There are quite a few of them.
Yeah, there are quite a few ministries. I mean, just off the top of my head, there's probably that work with women.
Yeah.
A dozen or more that I can think of right now, and that work with children, probably the same amount. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's some very well-known organizations here as well. I mean, A21 has a presence in Thailand, so does Destiny Rescue, Nightlight International, and then there's some more local ministries such as the Tamar Center, Don Nam Ministries, the Scarlet Thread, Rahab Center. So there's a lot of great ministries doing some wonderful work.
Working with men too, or are they all primarily the women and children?
Primarily women. There's one ministry working with transgendered individuals, and that's Don Nam Ministries. But as for working with men, the truth of the matter is, George, most people just, for lack of a better term, hate men. When it comes to this area of need, and I don't fault anybody. I get it. People have compassion for women, and we all should have compassion for children. But when you see women and children in this environment, you develop a righteous anger, a sense of injustice, and you want to have an outlet to direct it towards. Now, I think that outlet should go towards something else, but there are people I know who hate would be the appropriate word.
Yeah, I think so. My wife has a ministry that works with women and children facing homelessness. And they've been around for 4 or 5 years, and I work with men coming out of addiction. We've been around for 14 years or whatever, and she can raise money 10 times as fast as I can.
Yeah, right.
She raises money without even trying. She'll just, I got a check for $5,000 in the mail. And I'm like, I could go put on presentation after presentation, and I'll be lucky after seeing 500 people to have one guy come up to me and be like, because
here's $5.
Yeah, right. Usually people come up to me with just more men that need help. It's like that. I can't help the ones I have. So it's like, I need support, not more people.
Right.
You really think there's a lack of men struggling with addiction. But the reality is that I think that society-wise, people look at men and say, hey, you should pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You should, be the man and make better decisions and go out and support yourself and do all of these types of things. But the irony is that I think that those same things are the things that men couldn't do in the first place, and that's how they ended up there. It's almost like a circular reasoning where people think men should just go do the next right thing, but it's because he couldn't do the next right thing that he turned to prostitution or he turned to drugs.
Right.
And so the problem isn't going to go away just by making, this point that men should fix themselves. In fact, it tends to make it worse. And honestly, I always give the example of, all other ministries exist because of broken men. So
I would agree with that, George, because every child has a father, and most women have a husband, and yet so many. I think, and maybe your audience will be upset with me with this next word, but I think there's actually a disproportionate amount of focus that is lost on men, or that that men don't receive. And I mean, it's because it's fascinating. It's almost as if we want men to live the way we want them to live, but we don't offer them any resources or support. And then we look at men, and this is just my opinion. We look at men and we're like, I don't see you with humanity. I see you as a robot. And so the empathy, the compassion, the grace, the mercy, the understanding, the forgiveness is lost towards men, when in fact they need it no more or no less than women and children. And I think that's something that at least I believe I've experienced in my own life, and I'm saddened by it. Because again, if as much grace and mercy and compassion and empathy was directed to men as is directed to women, well, you would see a movement of men rise up in the world as never seen before.
Right. And that's part of, for me, even stuff like this, like even if it angers the audience, it don't matter to me, because that's the message. The message is the people that cause the most damage need probably the most help. And so we have to start to look at, the cause for a lot of things. And unfortunately, men are at the heart of a lot of that. And
I think people need help, not even gender. I just think people need help.
Sure.
Forget the gender, take the gender out of it. Just people, whether they're male or female, people need help. And I don't want to offer help based on gender. I want to offer help based on care and compassion for the individual standing before me. That may be a man, that may be a woman, that may be a child. But if there's someone standing before me that needs help, I want to help that person regardless of gender. Obviously, our focus is to men, but that doesn't mean that we avoid the hurt and the pain that's in all lives. And so, I mean, it's just something I'm learning here.
What do you think, if you could give me an example of one of your bigger success stories, what would that be?
Well, I can't go into too much detail because I don't want to identify who the individual is, but there was a man who for many, many, many years went to red light districts as a single guy, from what I know, as a married man. And that man's just not where that man's just completely different years later. There's another man I know who used to go to red light districts as well, and he's just not there anymore. I think so many times we think that the environment is too hard for God to work. And I think so many times the harder the environment, the more powerful God's work is on display. And so, like I said, with this man who for many years visited red light districts, even the man himself will tell you, I don't think I had any hope for myself. But what he did is the thing that I encourage all men to do. If you've got 7 miles of junk, bring it with you. All you have to do is make the first step to walk into the light. And then that's all. And then everything else, it's not an easy process, but that first step is the most important step of that process. And if you do that, there is help, there is hope, and there is healing. The man who reached out to me one time when I was in America and said, I need help in my life. I used to go to these places. I used to buy these things or these services. And now that man is completely different. His whole default setting has changed. And now he's one of the most spiritual Bible teachers that I know of. There's other men, even when I look at my life, and I had every reason to go to unhealthy coping mechanisms. But God just touched my heart one day and said that there's something better and that's me. And I always say, I think when men go to a red light district, I imagine Jesus would be there. And he wouldn't go around pointing his finger at every man saying, you're part of the problem. I think what he would do is he would say, I'm everything you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's other men who we've worked with who have been stuck on porn for 3, 5, 10, 15 years, walking in freedom for the last year, year and a half, 2 years. There's men we know who, one man was feeling suicidal and depressed, but just not at that place anymore. There's other men we know whose marriages were on the brink of divorce. Again, today, they're stronger and healthier than they've ever been and are now an example for someone else. Now, these are great stories. Obviously, this is not the majority of the stories. A lot of men, they don't even listen to us, or they're just, on for a little bit and then walk away. But there are stories of success. There are stories of healing. There are stories of redemption. And that's not the end of the story for the ministry. I think it's just merely the beginning, because I think the hearts of men, actually, I believe that the hearts of men are on the heart of God. And as long as they're on the heart of God, he'll be at work to draw people to himself. And I have the responsibility to partner with that work.
That's awesome. Now, the organization you mentioned in the beginning, you didn't actually mention their name, but it's YWAM, right?
Right, YWAM Thailand. Yeah, and I've been with YWAM in Thailand for almost 20 years now.
Wow. How did you end up with YWAM?
Well, that's crazy. I remember I was living in Utah for a while. And honestly, I was at this point in my life, basically, I'm just working at a grocery store and that's it, stocking shelves and thinking that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Got a phone call one day from a friend, said, hey, there's a YWAM program in the summer. We need some male staff. We'd love to have you come. You are recommended. I don't know by who or why. But I thought to myself, man, I could go to California for the summer. Why not? But that began, I had done mission trips before, and I actually enjoyed these mission trips with my local church in Colorado. But when I joined YWAM, I just kind of got to see it on a much bigger scale. And I thought to myself, well, I'm probably not going to be an astronaut. I'm not that good at the sciences. So this might be an option for me. So I just began to do missions, loved it. YWAM made it easy to join missions, and then made it really easy to give you opportunities to grow and to be a blessing to others. And so I fell in love with YWAM. They've been good to me. Just where I'm at today is a lot of good people have invested in my life, and a lot of those people are in YWAM. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I love YWAM. I think they're an amazing organization, and I love what they do. I think they're just through and through just really great people. The guys that I know from there, and just really think it's amazing. Right. Now,
yeah, right.
So they're more on the charismatic side of things sometimes, the Holy Spirit driven organization. So what's it like on the streets? Do you see like the actual, I know it's out there, but do you see a lot of the demonic and manifestations like that of things?
I think I see the display of evil. I see the display of evil in the way people treat each other. I think in the manipulation and exploitation. Do I see a manifestation? Not that I personally seen, but I know people who work in the ministry with women who have seen such things. I believe at its core, a red light district is built upon a bed of lies, with its bedpost cemented in hell. And so I believe without a doubt that it's the real issue is sin and the spiritual darkness. And so do I see anything weird? No, I don't. But I see the manipulation and exploitation that hurts, offends, bruises, and batters men and women each day. And when you take that over and over again, you develop a sense of hopelessness. And then there have been people who have taken their lives, or people who have had an abortion, or people who have left families. There's a woman I know who actually a couple women I know whose husbands have left them for this environment. So I have seen the effect of evil in the brokenness, destruction, and of families and individuals. Yeah,
it's funny that you say it like that. I actually heard, I can't remember who it was, but a famous speaker mentioned that when you see an actual manifestation of the devil, so on, whatever, some crazy thing, that's usually his last card, because when he's pulling that, then it's like he's out in the open. But the greatest, illusion the devil ever does is make you think he's not present and that just evil actually just exists on its own. And so the pervasive evil that surrounds addiction at its worst in sex or drugs or alcohol, I don't need to see somebody's head spinning around to know that's demonic. I mean, that usually when it gets to that point, then you know that, okay, the devil's on his last ropes, because why come forward? But when he can make you feel like it's just the person and not him, that's evil. When we look at people and think that they're evil and not recognize that there's a spiritual nature to all of this.
Right. And one of the things I try to share with people is, our enemy isn't the man.
Right.
Because actually men and women are created in the image of God. And, at the end of the day, anybody in a red light district that doesn't know Jesus needs to know him. And that doesn't matter what gender you are. And I always tell people, and I try to tell myself and my staff this as well. If I'm angry about what I see, if I'm riled up by the injustice of what I see, it should drive me to pray for the hearts of those that I reach out to. Because you see, a man can walk away from what I say. A man can not believe what I have to say. A man can deny my testimony. He can deny it, but he really can't, because I'm living proof of what God has done in my life. But no man or woman can run away from the power of prayer. And I think if we really wanted to see a change in people's hearts, there's a need for yourself, like counselors and leaders, psychologists, mentors, like whatever. There's always a need for that. But for the average layman, for the average person, if you want to make a difference, it's getting on your knees and praying for the hearts of men and praying for the hearts of women, because one, God hears prayer, and two, there's no man or woman that can run away from your prayer.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really good. I like that. So, I think
yeah.
We forget that sometimes. We really do. And I know for me, the learning curve of over the years of seeing drug dealers as the enemy, and then realizing, wait a minute, they're just broken people too. And it's a learning curve. It just is.
Right.
God reminds us of our own brokenness, and I believe that helps us to finally help others, to help them see them.
And I think it's really the heart of God too. And so my thing is, am I willing to pray for the heart of God? Because if I'm willing to pray for the heart of God, he'll give that to me. So for you to love who you minister to, for me to love who I minister to, it's not in my own strength. It's not. My own strength gets frustrated, overwhelmed, mad, disappointed, whatever. But to love people when they're at their worst is a love that can only be described as perfect. And I think that's God. And I know that to be God's love. Because to love people when they're at their best, George, that's not hard work. I can love you as long as you do everything I want you to do, right? I can do that in my own strength. But to love somebody who does everything that I think is wrong, who is hurtful and manipulative and exploitive, to love that person, you can only love that person through the power of God.
Amen. Amen. So what's your plans going forward? What any long-term plans? What's you and your wife, what are you thinking? Is this the final destination? What are you doing?
Well, okay, I get that question a lot, and I'm going to tell you the same thing that I tell people, okay? And do you know what my plan is? To be faithful, George.
That's it.
To be faithful. I think sometimes, and I know that there's people who have 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plans. You know what my goal is in 20 years? That in 20 years, God will look at that calendar and say, every day he was obedient to the call that I've given him, and he was faithful to walk out that call each day. I have dreams. I would love to see. I remember reading a book by Father John Green called Street Walking with Jesus about Emmaus Ministries in Chicago. I would love to see something like that here. I would love to start a church in the red light district for men to come with their questions and their doubts, right? I think that God's not scared of your doubts, and he's not offended by your questions. I would love to see a place where men can really work through those things that they feel. And I would love to have staff where we can minister in more than just one red light district. And I'd love to see more connect groups start. These are all things I'd love to see. But at the end of the day, the thing that I tell people is, God, find me obedient and find me faithful. And anything that comes out of that, God gets the glory. All these things I share with you, I'd love to see, right? I would love to see it.
Sure.
Like I said, I would love to see a place where men, I'd love to see the Timothy Initiative in Bangkok. I mean, we got to talk and make this happen, okay? But I'd love to see all this stuff. You and I and others we can be visionaries. You know, we can dream big, and I love dreaming big, but I don't want to dream so big that I forget that today I have a routine. And am I going to be faithful in the routine? Because actually, George, if I'm faithful with the routine, that's going to be transformative for someone else. And so my faithfulness is transformative to someone. And that's what I want to be known as.
That's awesome. I mean, I got to write that down. I'm going to go back and watch this again and write that all down. And so that when people ask me, I can say, I want to be, I'm going to do this anyways. But thank you, man. You're just amazing. I love hearing about this. Maybe you could let people know, how can they find you on social media and all that stuff?
Right. Yeah. Well, we're on different platforms on social media. So we're on Facebook. If you want to find my personal Facebook, just type in my name, Christian Lenty. If you want to find the MST Project, just type in the MST Project on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. You can find us there. You can go to our website, which is themstproject.com. And we've got some new stuff coming out on our website. We've got a new website actually coming out in just a few short weeks or months. And so got some great things coming down the pipeline.
That's amazing. And if they want to give to the ministry, which I highly recommend, how can they do that?
Right. They can go to our website and click on the top right where the donation button is. And then it's self-explanatory from that point on.
Fantastic. Christian, man, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, George.
Keep doing what you're doing. Keep being obedient.
Awesome.
And awesome. I love it. And hey, Timothy Initiative in Bangkok could happen.
Hey, I like it. Let's dream big, right? And I just want to encourage you, George. You're doing a great work as well. And what I love is the motto for the Timothy Initiative. You want to say it one more time?
Which one? I got a lot of mottos.
The one that's on your website, helping. Restoring broken men.
Restoring broken men. Yeah. Now I can't remember what it is, but yes.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love what you do as well. And I would hope that if somebody watches this video of us talking and dialoguing, that they would be inspired to reach out to men as well. Because again, men are on the heart of God.
Amen.
Men are on the heart of God.
Yeah. And I think, you know, and just a reminder that we help men and we can change a lot of the problems in the world.
That's right. That's right. One man at a time. Yeah. One man, one community, the world. So,
amen.
Amen.
So tell your lovely wife we said hello, and
will do.
We'll see you guys soon.
All right. Take care, George.
Take care, brother. Thank you, man.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All righty.